Nimble Superman, back again. Just sitting here wanting to do up another video because I don't know. I'm starting to like this video kind of thing. You know, it's a lot of fun and just sit there and just talk about stuff that you end up loving. And seeing anybody else out there who loves this kind of stuff. And for me, uh, just kind of sitting around wanting to talk about something, I thought about talking about Superman the animated series. Um, yeah, I absolutely loved that show. Absolutely. I would say it's one of the reasons I'm into Heroes and, the DCU today. Because I was born in 91. So when I think that show started in like, what, 96 maybe? Maybe, yeah, I think that's when it started. So I was, 5 or 6, something like that, watching the show. And it just really holds up in my opinion. It's one of the great interpretations of that character, in my opinion. And like, because like when you think of characters like Superman and Batman and those kinds of characters, like there's certain like versions of that character, of those characters that like you tend to respond to more than others. Batman tends to have like really polar opposites. You can have your favorite be like Adam West Batman, to like Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns Batman, and like everything in between. You know, and Superman's sort of like that. It's just his changes are not so drastic. I find. When you talk about like some a version of the character that's uh, very representative of the character, but just different, just different. And I always felt like Superman the Animated Series, they really just struck this really great balance of how do you keep something like Superman so classic, um, but just updated and have it in a very kind of contemporary way. Um, yeah, it's just a really great version. I think one of the biggest things I love about that show is what they really did with like his supporting cast and I guess the villains too. Lois is in that version is probably one of my favorites. Just I guess if I had to sit down and pick a Lois Lane that like I've enjoyed the most from any writer or any incarnation in other media, it's probably Dana Delaney's performance there, as Lois. She just really just nailed that character, and the people writing her on that show, they just really nailed her too. Um, Tim Daly comes in to do the voice as Superman. I got to be honest, like I like Tim as Superman. I think he does a good voice for it. But if I really had to pick my favorite voice, it'd probably be George Newbern from the Justice League show. And I guess that's another video coming too, talking about the Justice League show, because um, the Justice League show is an extension of that Superman. Like that Superman from Justice League is the Superman from Superman the Animated Series. It sets up this whole DC animated universe, and I assume if you're watching this video, you already know about all that stuff. For people who don't know, because I think I forgot to mention, like in the other video that I did for DC Animated Universe, I kind of just talked about how Batman the Animated Series and Superman the Animated Series were part of that universe, but it was also like the Justice League show and JLU. But I kind of always just include the Justice League kind of two shows together, like Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. To me, it's just like it's really the one show, like that. I guess that's just my own personal opinion, I guess. But you also got like stuff like Static Shock. I think they did another. It was like a spin-off from Batman Beyond. It was like the Zeta Project or something like that. It was the Yeah, that's really obscure. I would really love to have that in my collection. Those episodes. But I think it's just hard to find, and if you do find it, it's like super expensive. But anyways, getting back to Superman the Animated Series, because I tend to get off track because I just really just go off the cuff when I talk about this stuff. His supporting cast, I love their version of Jimmy, Perry. Everybody's very classic, but it's to me it's very contemporary. Like even for the '90s, like I think somewhere along the way DC kind of forgot that. It's just like that's just very reminiscent of their world. It's of the Superman kind of. uh, world. It's very reminiscent of that. Like, I mean, I can watch that show now, and like obviously the animation's not as good, but like to me, there's nothing really wrong with those characters or like whatever they're doing with the storylines or anything like that. Like, there's really not much wrong with it, you know. Um, the villains, man, I think they came up with like some of my favorite versions of Superman's villains, and I think that's another thing that's like wrong with like the Superman books is I can't help but feel like we forget about his rogues gallery. And somewhere along the way, we kind of just stopped really building up his rogues gallery, you know? And we just kind of forgot what they were about, you know? And we just try to just do something different with them instead of, well, let's do something different with them, but have it more representative of like what those villains and characters are about. And I guess the I'm not crazy, by the way. But yeah, I think one of the best examples is the Parasite. I always thought their version of Parasite in the show, I thought was like the best version. Now, I guess visually, I like how he's like the way he looks is great, but I think when he absorbs power, he should get like bigger. Like, you know, if you read the Superman Earth 1, Volume 2, that's a book DC's put out. You probably know about it, you probably don't. It's worth a Google search. It's the Superman Earth 1 series they did. It's fantastic. But in Volume 2, they had Parasite. And I didn't really like what I guess Shane Davis was doing there with Parasite and the way he looked. But the idea of him getting much bigger um, when he absorbed more power. I really enjoyed that idea. But getting back to like Superman the animated series, like if he just got bigger with more power, I think that would have just really encapsulated that character. Because to me, like I think one of the unifying kind of themes about Superman villains, and you know, because if you look at like Batman's villains, they're all obsessed and they're all crazy and that kind of thing. But like with Superman villains, they're all really, or at least the best ones, are the ones that have power, but abuse it. You know, it's like Superman has all this power, and he uses it to do good. And Parasite, he gets all this power, and he chooses to do bad. You know, it's one of those things where it just sounds like a really simple concept, but it really resonates well. You know, when they talk to each other, when they have dialogue, you know? Because, and another thing I think we kind of forget about a lot when we're like doing stories about Superman is that the thing about Superman in, like, when he deals with his villains, he's really just trying to help, you know? Like, I think we just, somewhere along the line, we kind of forget about that. We even do that with Batman. You don't see Batman, like, doing much to, like, talk to people, to try to help them, you know? Uh, to basically help them stop being a villain. Like, we don't just lock them up and then throw away the key. You know, like they do that on Flash, and it's just, oh my god, it's like so crazy to me. It's like you don't just lock them up. Jesus Christ, what's wrong with you? That's inhumane. Like, you know, I feel like Clark's the kind of guy that would like devote like every Sunday to like at least once a week to just do something about going to the prisons as I guess as Clark Kent. You know, or to volunteer somehow to help people get better, you know, because like when you go to like the idea of going to prison or Arkham Asylum or something like that is the idea that like, you know, you learn from your mistakes, and you try to come out as a better, uh, more respectful citizen, I guess. You know, that's the whole point of like going to jail and you know, yeah, in insane asylums and that kind of thing. The whole point of it is to try to get better, you know. And I feel like we don't do that as much with Superman. Superman is just the one character you would do that with. Like he is the character you would do that with, you know. About like if you would do that with any character, it would be him, right? But I guess getting back to Parasite, you know, just getting off topic here. Um, you know, he's one of those guys that's like he's always been one of my favorite Superman villains. Um, because like, you know, he comes from a really relatable uh kind of background. I wouldn't say background, but just in terms of his motivation. He's just because the characters change in different incarnations, but the idea of him just like he's just a janitor. Everybody overlooks him. Nobody really cares about him. And he notices that. And he just hates where he's at in life, and he just thinks he'll never be anything, and all of a sudden he's gifted with this power, and he can be somebody now. He can have whatever he wants. And then you got this asshole Superman coming in saying, listen, like, you have to just kind of give up this dream of, being somebody, basically, you can't hurt people, you can't, abuse people, and that kind of thing. And of course, Rudy is just kind of like, you dick. It's like, you don't know what it's like to be me, and that kind of thing. I think he's just a great villain. Like, it just really resonates well, with the whole archetype of Superman, And I could see him, Clark coming in, and like maybe on Sundays, coming in to see Rudy, just to see how he's doing and that kind of thing. Because Rudy's one of those people that like could change. Like he's close to being like that, And one character they didn't do, but like it'd be really cool, was Atomic Skull. Atomic Skull to me just represents this kind of character that like, again, it depends on the incarnation or whatever, but I always like to see Atomic Skull as this character that like he just can't be reasoned with. He's one of those characters that's just he's just a really bad person, you know. And for me, it'd be really interesting to see Clark kind of really battle that, because it just goes against what he believes in. People are naturally just good. That's what he believes in. As you can tell, I'm a huge Superman fan. I think about this stuff a lot. But just getting back to his villains, because like Parasite was my favorite. I loved what they did with Toyman. That's my favorite incarnation of the character in that show. Even Brainiac, I think that was my favorite incarnation of Brainiac, because like I felt like Brainiac resonated a lot better. He's much more of a personal villain for Superman. And because if you look at him like, in the comics and that kind of thing, he's just kind of this alien kind of villain. I guess he did take Kandor, I guess, but other than that, it doesn't really resonate as much as I think, is the version from the show, because like the version from the show, I guess, obviously if you're watching this video, but if you don't, he was a computer program on Krypton, and he's basically the reason, like everybody from Krypton died. He's basically the reason. Because like Jor-El, he had the idea that Krypton was gonna blow up, and Brainiac was there, because everybody trusted Brainiac. They had no reason not to trust him. And Brainiac's just like, oh, Jor-El's retarded, like, or stupid. I hate using that term, retarded. But he's stupid, and, he's doesn't know what he's talking about, and that kind of thing. And, yeah, it's just, to me, it just really resonates well, or at least more than, the other versions from the comics. Although, visually, I think I love the version Gary Frank and Jeff Johns did in Superman Brainiac. That whole design, him being really super big, like, I think that's how they should do him in a movie, just because I think one of the things I would like to see from Brainiac is, as much as like, he's a mental threat, I guess, for Superman, you can make him a little bit physical, like I could see Brainiac and Superman, I don't know, punching each other through some walls. Obviously, Superman's much stronger than him, and he'll easily win that fight, but, sometimes it's just interesting to see that kind of stuff, It's like Spider-Man. Like, obviously, Doc Ock's not going to beat Spider-Man, but, like, you love seeing it. It's like, whether it's in a movie or whether it's, in a comic book. I mean, you just love to see it, So, I guess that's what I'd like to see on that angle. Obviously, Lex Luthor. It's probably, like, I would say my favorite version of the character. Just Clancy Brown's just absolutely brilliant. Yeah, it's just so much good stuff, from that series. To me, it's just this really great interpretation of the whole Superman kind of universe. He was a bit weaker than your normal version of Superman. Um, but to me, that's okay. Because he's still because the thing about Superman, like in terms of his powers, and I'm sure Superman fans who read understand this, that like his powers tend to change depending on what he needs to do in that story. It really does. Obviously, I'm one of those people that prescribe to like he can't be moving planets. That's retarded. Again, sorry, um, but that's stupid. And like he shouldn't be moving planets or sneezing solar systems out of existence, and or being careful not to destroy the universe by listening to art. Like he shouldn't be that strong. That's like so stupid. So stupid. You know, like I felt like what they did with the show was pretty close to like where you should be. To me, you should just be stronger than a lot of other people. Um, and I think one of the cool things, I think the way I kind of picture what they did with the show, it's probably not right, but I guess in my whole kind of fan fiction, I guess idea is that he kind of got stronger with age. You know, because by the time you see him in JLU, because in the first season of Justice League, he was pretty weak, and you noticed it a lot. Um, I would say pretty much every episode you notice it because you can hear Bruce Timm and them talk about it, and they were just kind of like, "Well, we didn't even realize they were doing it," and I can totally understand that. It's like they didn't realize because the idea of it is, well, if this person can take out Superman, then this guy's a really powerful guy, right? But then they just realized, well, Superman can't be that weak. We just got to stop doing that. We really, we really just got to stop doing that. I obviously got to cut off this video here because it's just getting way too long. I noticed the timer down here is like 7 minutes and it's gonna cut off soon. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of make a video and talk about Superman the animated series. It's just I think the best interpretation of that character when you think of how do you preserve the classic elements of Superman and bring in some contemporary flavor to the Superman side of things. I think it's just, to me, it's perfect. It really is. It extends to Justice League. He has some crossovers with Batman. It's just a really great show. And all the dark side stuff, Michael Ironside. I think Michael should even come back and do the movie, because they're going to have Darkseid in the sequel. But yeah, it's going to cut off soon. So yeah, let's talk about it. Any fans out there? Any fans of Superman? Shoot me a message, man.